What's up, YouTube? Lord of Houston coming at you with a video known as LTH 713 Space City. We in a mother humping building. Alright, so got some Texas news I gotta cover up. Of course, some Texas news that I ended up waking up to. You know, starting with Tytus Howard being traded to the Cleveland Browns for a 5th-round pick. And I'll be more than happy to give my honest thoughts about it. The same Tytus Howard that was drafted in the Bill O'Brien era back in 2019, a pick after, the Andre Dillard. And I got to say, he was going into his last year of his contract and had an opportunity to extend him once more. But, you know, unfortunately, that wasn't the case, since, Cleveland ended up extending him for 3 more years, along with, the Texans getting the 5th pick in return. Tytus Howard, through it all, through the good, the bad, and the rough times, the Bill O'Brien, the David Culley, and the Lovie Smith era, you know, and of course, had his share of injuries as well, but been pretty versatile, through it all, played right tackle, played right guard, played left guard. Hell, he even played left tackle, which is primarily the position of Ariante Ursary, assuming that he doesn't move the right tackle. But the dude's been pretty nice, man. Was the leader of the offensive line in 2025. I mean, I just thought, because of how valuable and underappreciated he was, I just felt like the Texans would have gotten a little bit more. Like the compensation, in the Tytus Howard trade could have been a little bit better than a 5th-round pick. To be honest, in my opinion, since I officially graded a C at best, could have gotten a few extra picks in return, or, about a 4th or 3rd-round pick, I want to say, you know, but, you know, it's all about having a backup plan, as far as Nick Caserio goes, because now that Tytus Howard is now on to the Cleveland Browns, you know, Houston's going to have to, not only adjust the offensive line through the draft, but also in free agency too. Because, man, I want to see CJ Stroud consistently protected in 2026 and so on going forward. Now that Tytus Howard is going, because the only old lineman returning is Ariante Ursary, since he's on his rookie deal. Meaning that the Houston Texans are going to have up to, 3 to 4 new starting offensive line and going into the 2026 campaign. So Caserio really got to make sure, to beef up that offensive line aggressively. I mean, yeah, the talent's going to, Tank Dell's going to come back. The offensive talent is still going to be there, assuming they re-sign Dalton Schultz. And nonetheless, it'd be nice to see Dalton Schultz come back, but if not, then, they might have to find another tight end, at least through free agency. Like, for example, Isaiah Likely, since he's younger than Dalton Schultz. I wouldn't mind, Dalton Kincaid or Isaiah Likely or even, impending free agent tight end. But man, it sucks to see Tytus Howard go, man. I would have liked, to see him play at least one more year in his contract that he's under, but at the same time, does saves us some money, since there's always some pros and cons in the trade, goes to show that, everything's possible and everything's not guaranteed. So, Compensation could have been a lot better, but it's all about having a backup plan if a primary plan doesn't work out, which I always understand as a Texans fan. So, wishing Tytus Howard nothing but the best in Cleveland, and sure gonna miss Tytus Howard in the Houston Texans uniform. Really am, but the logo is all I care about, and the logo forever comes first. The Texans logo at that. So, officially time to move on. And another part of this video I want to talk about is the Houston Texans acquiring David Montgomery from the Detroit Lions, while the Lions got a fourth round picks, fourth and seventh round pick in Juice Scruggs. Now about that trade, David Montgomery, and I said on Instagram that Kenneth Walker and David Enchan were my top considerations, while David Montgomery was my sleeper pick, in free agency. But hey, I gotta say, I know his numbers were pretty down for either this past season or the last few couple seasons, but I gotta say, even though they might need a little extra speed in the running back position, which I'll admit, I gotta say, picking up David Montgomery in a field trade gotta be an underrated move in my mind. Pretty underrated move, Gonna, could help in red zone matters and where the Texans struggled at tremendously this year. Hopefully he could be the key to fixing our red zone issues. And of course, taking the pressure off CJ Stroud. Can't don't want to go into 2026 depending on Stroud. Even though I'm rooting for Stroud for a bounce to, have a good fourth year. And of course, the Juice, shifting, Juice Scruggs, would have nice to see him prove himself, but that's not the case, since he's gonna have an opportunity to prove himself in Detroit. I wish him the best there, under Dan Campbell, to be exact, But David Montgomery trade, I can get behind. Because the Texans actually need a running back. Proven running back, that could produce, produce consistently, which likely will lead to the Texans releasing Joe Mixon, which will free up $8.5 million in cap space. I know fans were rooting for Joe Mixon, to be resigned, but with the trading for David Montgomery, that's likely won't be the case now. I ain't gonna lie. I do appreciate Joe Mixon's time in Houston. I'm not gonna lie. But, if it wasn't for that, that injury off that hip drop tackle week 2 of 2024, Mixon would still probably be around another year. But, as the saying goes, the show must go on. And as far as the compensation, trading for David Montgomery while sending a 4th and 7th round pick and Juice Scruggs to the Lions goes, I can't be too mad at it. I really can't. Yeah, it's easy to say it's good on paper, but, on the gridiron, seeing how it plays out on the gridiron, told a different story. So, I know free agency hasn't started, but I gotta say, David Montgomery, welcome to the Houston mother humping Texans. Cannot wait to see what you bring in this Texans offense in 2026. And yes, the offensive line is a major priority. you know, in free agency and in the draft. Now that Tytus Howard is now gone, because, Jake Andrews, he alright, but right guard, left guard, and now right tackle definitely needs to be adjusted, or addressed, I should say. Because, like I say, you know, not sure how I'm feeling about Blake Fisher going forward, you know, but Casario gotta take care of business in addressing that O-line. Because, you know, especially, adding some bullies in that interior O-line. I mean, yeah, I ain't gonna lie. It would be nice to bring in Ed Ingram back. Ed Ingram, it would be great. Bring him back in and or Trent Brown. But more, I want to bring in Ed Ingram more for sure. But even if that were to happen, you know, still would have to, address the interior portion of the offensive line, such as right tackle, left guard, and even right guard to be exact. And keep, yeah, the O line shuffle is subject to happen, but keep Ariante Ursery at left tackle. That's just how I look at it. For the Houston Texans online. So, yeah, that's it. That's about all I got. And wanted to put my 2 cents in. So, any more Texans related news should come out. Hey, I'll be around to make a video giving my thoughts and opinions about it. So, let's go Houston Texans and let's take care of business in free agency.